Welcome to the Author to Authority podcast. And if you are a parent of children, preteens, or teens, you definitely need to listen to today's podcast because I have on with me Cai Graham, and she has been in the trenches of parenting and is now on a mission to equip parents and teens with the tools for navigating adolescence. She's a parenting and parenting and teen coach, speaker, and Amazon #1 best-selling author of The Teen Toolbox. And she specializes in supporting families and overcoming obstacles, including communication issues, loss, and trauma, so that they can enjoy a brighter future. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, and I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you, Kim.
So you have a very interesting story. So why don't you start out by introducing yourselves to our audience and telling us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you. I guess I've sort of been a bit of a chameleon. I think it's every big birthday I seem to have sort of done a U-turn and changed sort of career. I started off doing corporate in my 20s, and for maybe some people can relate. And for a decade, I was suffering from imposter syndrome. It was hard work, and I was able to, or I chose to sort of pack it all in when my daughter was 18 months, and the nursery wouldn't take her because she had chicken pox. And my boss.
Gee, wonder the nursery wouldn't take her.
Well, the worst thing was my boss sort of basically sort of frowned at me and said I was letting the side down and not seeing my sort of client. And I suddenly realized, actually, I was falling in between two stools here. I wasn't being a mother, as good a mother as I could to my kids. And I certainly wasn't being the businesswoman that was expected of me. So I threw in the towel there. But the funny thing was, I came in from work and my husband sort of said, "And how did your day go, dear?" And it was yeah, right, about that. And so it was, we were literally sort of rocketed into sort of coping with one salary. So that was something that we had to get used to. But I then sort of in my 30s was a stay-at-home mum, and not secretly at all. It was the best job ever. I loved it. But I think I got to the stage where in my 40s, I was sort of thinking, do you know what? I think there might be something, more to this than just the school run. I was sort of thinking, come on, you're an intelligent woman. And it was taking its toll on me personally. So I reinvented again, and nothing to do with corporate, became a wedding and portrait photographer, which was great. And I did that for a while. And it's really quite interesting how you realize that people are papering over the cracks, and the beautiful pictures that are appearing on the wall and on the sideboard are not quite resembling the family that I was watching when I was sort of, taking photos of them. And also the sort of we call them in the UK the bridezilla, when you're doing the wedding photographer, who is making huge demands but looks so wonderful and angelic on the photos. So I got a good sort of a snapshot, excuse the pun, of what sort of family life and sort of real life's like when you sort of manage to sort of peer in. So my dad had terminal cancer, and I couldn't sort of say to a bride, "Listen, yeah, sure, I'll be at your wedding as long as my dad sort of is stable." I mean, it's just not fair. So I hung up my camera for a while. And when he died and I'd sort of done my grieving, I tried to go back into the corporate, or not the corporate, the business world. And I knew I had to do something to pay the bills, and yet I'd lost my mojo. And so I decided I got the help of a coach, and he sort of just basically opened a totally different world up to me. And he said, I sort of, do I have to go back to photography? And well, actually, Cai, love, this is actually your life. You can do whatever you like. So I thought, I want to make people feel the way he made me feel, empowered and inspired and optimistic. And so I trained as a coach, and I did all my certificates, and I was helping women. But what started happening, I was working with a charity alongside of that, a charity for children. And it was very much online, and, you know, because now that they use the phone less and less now. So it was online and online chat and emails. And I was finding that these kids were really, really struggling. And what was happening was the parents were going, listen, I know I'm as mad as a bag of frogs. I know I need help, but please, will you help my child out? And so that's how I became what I am today, is basically a parenting expert helping parents help their children. So I would often see kids on a one-to-one basis, and I coach parents. And so that's how I have sort of morphed. I've had many careers, and bravo because of it, because it's armed me with a fantastic toolbox of life, I think, and how to deal with various things. So that's sort of where I am right now, Kim.
You know what, you bring up a really wonderful point, and it's not our main conversation today, but I think it's just something we need to bring out, and especially with women, applies to men too, but you know, we're women, we see this in women, is the fact that as women specifically, we go through a lot of different stages in life. Yeah. And we can't be defined by each stage, and we are allowed to reinvent ourselves in each stage. You know, my husband and I made the decision right from the very beginning that I was going to be the one that stayed home. And it wasn't his decision, it was our decision. Yeah. The truth was I had finished high school. I didn't have any other education at the time. And he had way more earning potential than I did. So, you know, it was basically the person who could make the most money worked and the other person stayed home, right? Yeah. And I made that decision because I knew it was the best decision for my family. And I don't regret it for a moment. I mean, I look at my kids now and I'm so proud of them and what we invested in them. But, you know, there came a stage where I needed to be doing something else, that just being a stay-at-home mom, you know, it wasn't enough, because I'm more than just a wife and a mother, right? Like, I've got all these gifts, talents, and abilities. So kind of like you know, in my 30s, I did a few things entrepreneurial in my 20s, really started in my 30s. You know, my 40s have all been a decade of just totally, completely reinventing myself and what it is I do and who I am and how I help people. You know, I just had my 49th birthday. I'm not ashamed of it. And, you know, I'm really looking forward to this next decade of just taking everything I've learned in all my experiences and getting out there. And you know what, as women, you can recreate yourself. You don't have to be defined by who you were in the past, and whatever education you have either.
Totally. And the point is you can reinvent yourself time and time again. And what amazes me actually is that I'm sort of in the empty nest sort of you know, sort of arena now. And I was going to say it saddens me, but what surprises me, how many women are sort of casting themselves onto the scrap heap and sort of going, oh, well, you know, the kids have gone and I've got nothing, you know, there's nothing to look forward to. And I'm going, hell, I've got sort of, you know, decades ahead of me, and I am so excited. And fine, it's, you know, the thing is we're allowed to choose what we want to do. And so some people sort of say, I don't know why you want to do all that. And I went, well, you see, it's not my idea of fun just going around the golf course or having coffee every single day. No, let's not knock it, because, you know, I did it in my 30s when the kids were off school. But for me, and it sounds like for you, it's that opportunity, and what can I learn next, and what can I do, and how can I make a difference? And for me, that's really exciting. So, yeah.
Well, you know, for me, I had my first child at 20 and my second at 22, and I was married at 20. So I didn't have, like, I came out of high school, got married, had kids, right? So I never had that time just to be me and to enjoy things. I was always raising kids, helping raise other people's kids, you know, being wife, mother, all these kinds of things, you know, working off and on, building small businesses to help support the family. I didn't have time to do the things that I've wanted to do. So I've decided that, you know, empty nest for me is about me having my time now. I didn't have it before the kids. You know, some people have, you know, that 5-10 years between, you know, the end of high school and, you know, marriage and kids. I didn't have that. So now is my time to do all these things that I've wanted to do. And life is exciting. You know, empty nest should be the time where you explore who you are and do the things you've always wanted to do.
And we have the benefit of experience behind us as well, don't
Oh
we?
yeah.
So one hopes, fingers crossed, there's going to be fewer mistakes.
Well, and the other thing I find too at this age is it's not that I don't care about people, but I don't care what people think of me.
Yeah, and that takes a while to get used to, and it takes a while to learn, I think.
So I'm not doing things to please other people. I'm doing what I feel like I'm being called to do.
Bravo. And we are all the better for it, so thank you.
So I know you've come prepared with some really great hints and tips and advice for dealing with teens. So I just want to let you loose to talk for a bit, and then I'll ask you some questions afterwards.
Okay. I specifically help teens with anxiety, childhood anxiety. And what I'm finding is that when I speak to the parents, there's so much shame, there's so much guilt, and a lot of it is, do you know what? I've been parenting for long enough. I really should know what I'm doing. And it's no, it doesn't work. Yes, I can see it doesn't work like that, does it?
No.
And I think the thing is that what we fail to realize, or what we don't give ourselves enough credit for, is that no sooner do we get used to the terrible twos and the toddlers, that they move on to another stage. And this is what we're finding now when kids are teenagers. The goalposts have shifted, and actually we don't understand all the rules. And more to the point, it's a different world now for our teenagers than it was when we were teenagers. So we don't actually have the benefit of hindsight either.
We're not even sure what the game is.
No, exactly. I think if we tip up, we should get a medal for that anyway, because it's hard work sometimes. And many parents say to me, well, my kid just goes into their room. They just won't speak to me. They roll their eyes and there's silence in the house. And if there's not silence, there's bickering. And so everyone's at loggerheads. So I have a technique, and it's basically called 3 questions, because I try not to overcomplicate things. And the thing is this needs to be explained by the parent to the child so they understand the rules. But basically what it is that you have the opportunity to ask your child 3 questions. One, and it's very simple. One is, what's your number? And that is basically a way of getting a benchmark on how your child's feeling each day. So it's on a scale of 0 feeling really, really low, really black, to 10 being, no, thank you, mother, I'm absolutely fine. You can leave me alone. I'm on the crest of a wave here. And so what happens is that, your child...
That's a good description, wave, because that's how it goes. Up,
well,
and
it is.
That's
the thing. And this is how we learn to judge how our child is feeling, because we look at them, and if they're monosyllabic, how can you tell if it's a good day or a bad day? And then the thing is if we don't know, we start panicking and going, oh, I've got all this wrong. So ask your child, what is your number? And you might sort of find that maybe for one child, the norm is 7, whereas for another child, the norm is 4. So it's working out, and it's not overreacting, but it's once you start this, you start working out where the average is and where the peaks and troughs are. The second question is, what's your word? And that is really, give me a describing word of how you're feeling. And sort of fine won't cut it. We've got to have more than that. And it's no, I want to hear, are you feeling optimistic? Are you feeling jealous? Are you feeling happy? Are you feeling hopeful? Are you feeling suicidal? Are you, all these words, just give me one word that describes how you're feeling today. And a lot of the time this can be done after school. So you can sort of, you can gauge how the child's feeling. So what's your word? What's your number? What's your word? The third question is the kicker. And it's, do you want to talk? And I would say 95% of the time, she says, speaking from experience, you get, no, thanks. No, you're all right. No, 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 no. And that's fine. The parent must abide by this, because those are the rules, in the fact that, right, okay, well, I know that it's a sort of 7, and I know it's sort of, energetic or whatever it is. But if the child doesn't want to talk, that's absolutely fine. What happens is that you might, every so often, the 4 or 5% of the time, get a, yeah, okay. And what I suggest, when your child says, yes, they want to talk, don't pounce on them like a rash. Just sort of say, oh, okay, well, is now a good time to talk? And they might go, well, yeah, or let me just finish my homework, or, can I talk? Shall I make you a hot chocolate whilst, we go through this? But it's I think the thing is not to overreact, and it's to remain calm and to remain supportive, because that gives your child the opportunity to open up, and it gives them the opportunity to know, actually, even when they do and they don't want to talk, that you have their back, that you are there to support them. And what many parents have sort of said to me is, I don't know how this works. This is fantastic. My child's actually spending more time in the family room, you know, the family areas, or my child's actually sort of sitting down and watching Netflix with the dog on. And I went, yeah, that's because they know that they are not going to get the Spanish Inquisition from you, because those are the rules. So it allows more freedom in the home, so your child doesn't throw their bag on the floor and run upstairs to hide from you doing that. Are you all right? Tell me how your day went. And it's that neediness that the kids can't stand. So just, what's your number? What's your word? And do you want to talk? And that opens up the possibilities of communication. And so many parents are saying to me, do you know what? This is gold. And the kids love it, because they know that when every single day they're not going to get the same sort of incessant questions from mum or dad. And it just allows us as parents to have an insight of what's going on without suffocating our kids, if that makes sense.
And I think there's the other end of it too. And the other end of the pendulum is parents who don't talk to their kids at all.
Well, yes.
And who think are parenting when they're not, because they're all sitting on their phones and they're barely talking to their children. So I think those three questions really kind of force the balance to the middle, you know, where you're not overwhelming this child, but you're not ignoring the child. And I think one of the keys is you know, when your child finally does open up, I think it's all about listening. You can't be judging. You can't be thinking about how to answer their, you know, and I think an important question, you know, that I've learned to ask after, you know, having these discussions is, you know, I have some things I think could help you, you know,
and I think
would you like to hear them? Because,
totally.
You know, been there, can I help you? Yeah. Right.
And you touched on it, is that a lot of children say to me that they feel irrelevant. The fact that, you know, they are being fed, they are being, you know, being housed, they are, you know, their mum or dad are making sure they get the homework done, but it's all stuff, and there's no communication and there is no connection. And I think that's what kids crave, is they crave the attention. And if the only attention they're going to get is the negative stuff, then what's the blooming point? So yeah, you're quite right. It's just reaching out and creating that framework for parents to just realize that actually conversation is quite important.
And a topic I'd love for you to touch on, because I think we talked about this a bit when we were doing our pre-interview, is, you know, two things. First of all, you know, especially when your child, well, even up till they're in their mid-20s probably, your child can't be your friend. And you have to be the parent, and you can't be afraid to put your foot down when you need to. Yeah,
parents, as you rightly say, I think nowadays we are, you know, we hear so many sort of, oh, well, the children have their rights too, you know, which is absolutely, which is absolutely fine. But kids need boundaries. Yeah. Kids need to understand what the rules are. I mean, you know, they get rules at school. I'm not saying they need to be ruled with a rod of iron at home, but they need the guidance. They need to be pulled up when they sort of make mistakes. They need to be shown how to integrate well and how to communicate well. And when things are, you know, when they get things wrong, we need to be brave enough to say to them, listen, buddy, this isn't going to work here. And it doesn't matter if it's not doing chores, if it's being rude, if it's, you know, whatever it is, kids need to be pulled up on it. And, you know, especially when when we're molding them, you know, even through, some people are probably thinking, oh gosh, even that doesn't sound right. But we need to maintain a degree of control to show our kids our values, what's right and what's wrong, you know, and that some behavior or unacceptable behavior will not be tolerated. Yeah, I agree with you.
I think it's not molding. I think it's sculpting. I once heard, was it Michelangelo? One of those big sculptors. Was it I think it was the David. There was this massive piece of stone and nobody wanted to touch it and nobody could figure out what to do with it. But I think it was Michelangelo. Okay, so I may be wrong. I remember the story, don't remember the names, but this person looked at the stone and he studied it. And he saw the David with inside the stone. So I see parenting as you see your child's potential. Like, you can't force your child to become whatever, but as a parent, you see the potential, you see the gifts, you see the talents, you see the abilities, you see the strengths, you see the weaknesses, you see all these things. And your job is to chip off all the unnecessary stuff so that your child can become the productive adult that they were meant to be.
Absolutely. And I think, and it is doing those little chips, and it is sort of, it's that is our job.
And it's a long
really,
process.
It is. Listen, my oldest is 26 and I'm still doing a bit of that. We're sort of, still smoothing out the rough edges, but that's our job. And I think when I was growing up, we were very much of the children should be seen and not heard. And that's why many parents struggle, because that's probably what they grew up with too. And it's a totally different ball game nowadays. And it is our responsibility to be the role models that our kids need.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I work with a lot of young adults and stuff like that. And I just want to laugh every time they say this to me, but I don't, because I'm just like, okay, you were not equipped to be an adult. But they're like, adulting's really hard. I'm thinking, you haven't even started yet.
Oh dear. Bless.
And I mean, it's not even big things. It's like, well, I don't know how to close a bank account.
Yeah. Yeah.
You go to the bank and you talk and you tell them you want, but they've never been taught these skills.
But you're quite right. There was one story I heard, and it was sort of for a college application, and a daughter phoned up her mum and sort of said, where are the stamps? I've got to sort of submit my, by post, this 20-page college application. And what the mother suddenly realized is, well, hang on a minute, this sort of is a fairly hefty document going in, and it needs more than the regular stamp. And yet her daughter had no idea, because she hadn't been told about that. Had the daughter found a stamp and popped it in the mail, it probably wouldn't have got there, because it wouldn't have been correct postage. And yet our kids don't know this. And we can tell, and yet at school we're teaching them about calculus, and we're teaching them so much about logarithms and cloud formations, and we're not teaching them the life skills. So that's our responsibility, I guess.
So something else I wanted to get back to, and I think what I'm about to say is not all the time, but I think there's times, especially with your teenagers, when the behavior comes extreme. The attitude's through the roof, the behavior's through the roof, they're being rebellious, all this other kind of stuff. There's a term I like to use, and it's called pulling the rug out on the little buzzards and let them tumble for a while. And I think, when your teenagers exhibit that behavior, and they will exhibit that behavior every once in a while. If it's on a regular basis, then you've got a serious problem you've got to deal with. Like that meant that they just don't understand boundaries and they've got to be retaught. But, every teenager is going to go through that extreme, even the really good teenagers. And I think, when those things happen, you cannot be afraid to pull the rug out on them and let consequences happen.
Yeah.
You can't protect them from it, because they're almost in adulthood. They've got to learn that, this behavior is not acceptable. And if this is the behavior that's going to happen, well, hey, the rug gets pulled out on you, and, you're going to be unhappy for a while.
And this is what I am hearing so much of this at the minute. Whether or not you want to call it helicopter parenting or whatever. I had a mum yesterday who was saying, but he keeps on forgetting his school bag. So, or his gum shields. If he forgets his gum shield, he can't play rugby. And I'm going,
Yep.
And she's sort of going, no. So I take it, and I went, well, then he's never going to learn. And, and she sort of said, what do you mean I don't take it to school after? And I went, correct. You absolutely don't. Or if he, but what happens? I need to make sure he's done his schoolwork, or I've got to make sure he's got his books. And I went, no, No, because he needs to learn to fail, because the sooner he learns to fail, the more uncomfortable he gets. If you wait till he's in his sort of late 20s before he fails, then his drop's going to be a hell of a lot harder. So, and she was going, oh, so I've just got to let him forget things. And I went, yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
And,
you know, like my son was never a morning person, still isn't. In my womb, he wasn't a morning person. Didn't realize it till after he was born. But, you know, high school was lots of fun trying to get this child out of bed and to school. And, you know, he had to be on the school bus. We're half an hour from school. So, you know, I ain't driving him every day. But, you know, the rule was, you know, I'd get them up. You know, I'd give them focusing cues, right?
Yes.
Okay, you've got 10 minutes. This is what you've got to do. I don't do it for them. But, you know, you've got 15 minutes. You know, you need to be in and out of your shower. You know, hey, knock, knock, 15 minutes up, get out, right? So lots of focusing cues because my son is ADHD. But ultimately, you know, if he chose to miss that bus, he was paying me money to drive him in. He would be going into his piggy bank. He would be paying me money. I would drive him to school because he wasn't missing school because he missed the bus. But now he's not only paying me for my gas money, he's also paying me for my time. And I came up with a rate. So when you miss the school bus, you're forking over money to me because you've now wasted my gas, my money, and wear and tear on my vehicle. You are still going to school.
You're so right. And that is where actions have consequences.
You know what? It only happened once.
Oh, totally. Yeah, find the pinch and find where the discomfort is, and you're absolutely laughing. Yeah, you're quite right. I mean, I think we spoke about this. My son, punctuality wasn't his strong point. And he was always sort of dragging, and, you know, he'd get there eventually, but in his own time. And so when I got to a stage, because we're quite rural, that I used to collect my kids from parties. And I sort of said to him, right, here are the rules. If you aren't outside within 5 minutes of the agreed time, then I shall walk into the party in my pajamas and my dressing gown. And he sort of, yeah, okay, right. But he appeared on the first instance with seconds to spare. And he looked at me, and there I was in my pajamas and my dressing gown, and she went, oh, heck, oh, right, okay, she means business. And I would not have flinched if I needed to walk straight into that party with all those kids. And that would have been a lesson. I think he learned the easy way by, okay, mum will follow through with this one. But they need to feel the friction. They need to feel the pain, because otherwise it ain't going to work. You know, they just know that we will be there to mop up after them. And that's just not fair on them as well as us.
Well, you're not preparing them to be successful adults.
No, you're quite right.
And I think something else, and we touched on this in our pre-interview, is the fact is, parents, you better not threaten or promise unless you are going to carry through with it.
I think that's the thing. As soon as you, as soon as you make a threat that is never carried out, they know that they've won already, and they will continue to push the boundaries. One woman sort of said to me, oh, it was absolutely ridiculous. My kids were bickering in the back of the car, and I was at the end of my tether. So I just said to them, right, that's it. Easter's cancelled. And I looked and I went, and how's that working out for you? Because kids just know that actually it doesn't work like that, or, well, it does or it doesn't. But if you do not come through with I don't like to call them punishments, because I think punishments build resentment, but let's call them learnings instead. And once
I called them promises. I promise you.
This will happen. Yeah. And I think the thing is, we've got to be quite hard-nosed about it. And you know, we've got to stick to our guns, and it can be hard sometimes.
It is hard, but what I've learned is that parents think like this is a forever hard. No, this is only a few minutes, a few hours, a day or two hard, right? Like, you pull your rug on your kids big time once or twice.
Yeah.
You don't
they
have to do it very often. They learn quickly
no.
that you're going to do what you say you're going to do, and they don't like the consequences. So you don't have to keep doing this forever. You only have to do it for a short time, and then the kids figure out, and then the behavior changes.
Yeah, that's it. They need to know where the rules are. They need to know where the boundaries are. And then actually everyone is happy. Everyone, sort of knows how it all operates.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we've only got a few minutes left here. So I want to give you an opportunity to talk about your book.
Oh, cool. Thank you. Here it is, the Teen Toolbox. Yeah, I never thought I'd write a book. I mean, imagine, gosh, little old me writing a book. What would I have to say? But I tell you what, once you get going, it's really quite, I found, I don't know, sort of any of your viewers or listeners, I found that if I had a framework, it was really quite easy. Yes. And it's not something that's going to pay the mortgage at the minute, but I tell you what, it's a great marketing tool, and it's a great tool to give you kudos, to give you authority. I suddenly realized, oh, okay, this needs to be written. And I think I started in the September, and it was in Amazon by the March. So nice. However long that took. And that was really, it was quite, once I sort of got my head around it, that, okay, this is what I needed to do. I had a big, long, and I did get help. I got a publisher sort of to help me, and they sort of had these packages, do it yourself, do it with a bit of help, all those sort of things. So I sort of opted, I think, for the middle package, which was basically, listen, we've done loads and loads of books for entrepreneurs. We know how to do it. So, follow our pattern and we will. And it was a massive sort of kitchen table full of Post-it notes. And it was basically chapter 1 all the way through. And I had a pink Post-it for introduction, and I had, a sort of green Post-it for the learnings, and a yellow Post-it for what's the takeaway. And once I sort of looked at it, that maybe I think I'm probably quite a visual person. It was basically, all right, today I'm doing this pink Post-it. That's what I have to worry about, rather than the magnitude of creating a book. So by breaking it all down, it just became a really quite a fluid process for me. And I always say never, I never say never, but I always said, oh no, I've only got one book in me. I'm now planning a second one, because actually my process suited me and it worked really quite well.
And I think, one thing I've learned is, first of all, is the organization. And you key point, you organized it in a way that made sense to you, and you were able to move forward. And there's lots of different ways to do it. And I teach lots of different ways to do it, right?
All right, got you.
But I think people are so afraid of the process. But, what I've learned is most chapters are usually in that 1,500 to 3,000, 3,005 word range. It depends,
Yeah.
So one of the things I tell people is, if you've ever written a long form blog post, let's say a 2,000 word blog post, that's about a chapter, you know? And if you can write a good, strong introduction, make the body of the work, interesting. So you're discussing the problem, you're providing solutions, and then you write a nice closing, that's a chapter.
Yeah, totally. But you see, if you haven't done it before, it's quite daunting. And for me, it was really, really daunting. And I was sort of going, oh, but I'm not very good at English, and I was never very good at school. So how on earth could I possibly do this?
That's what editors are for.
Yeah. You're quite right, but that's the whole point. And what a lot of us women don't do is ask for help. But when someone sort of said, "Come on, you don't have to do this all on your own," it was right, I've got permission to get someone to help me out here, and that's exactly, and it made the process so much easier. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. How can people connect with you and find out more about you and how you can help them?
My website is caigraham.com. So I guess you'll put all this in the show notes, Kim, thank you. But it's caigraham.com. And I've got a Facebook group if guys are interested in sort of wanting support in my sort of community. It's a great like-minded community of parents that just want the best for their kids, but sometimes realizing that as we touched on. You got to play hardball sometimes. And the easiest way to get through to that is caigraham.com/FB group for Facebook group. And that'll take you you there. So
now, what's the name of the group? Because some people will just search the name on Facebook.
It's called Parents Teen Toolbox. So that's it there. So it's the Teen Toolbox for parents, or you can just search. I think there's only one Cai Graham on Facebook, or spelt my way. If not, just look for someone that looks like me wearing pink. So it's quite easy.
Oh, I know. I'm so easy to find. I'm like the only Kim Thompson-Pinder. So
yeah, it's cool, isn't it? So it's that, thankfully. So that's how, and then I'm on Instagram and YouTube and stuff like that. So that's good. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I think, you've shared such valuable information, and especially those 3 questions. Yeah. What an amazing tool for parents. So this has been Cai Graham and Kim Thompson-Pinder on the Author to Authority podcast. Have a great day, and we will see you on the very next episode. Bye now.